Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Hi, and welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. It's good to have you with us this morning. This morning, we just have one guest, Randy Garris. Randy is a longtime pastor here in the Joplin area and has got the privilege of teaching ministry students out at Ozark Christian College, which I'm sure provides no small amount of entertainment in his life. You know, I get to do that for the Catholic seminarians, too.
It's a blast, isn't it?
I tell you what, it's a trip.
It is.
Always.
It is.
But it keeps you young and keeps you on your toes. Yeah. We're going to be talking this morning about mental health and how that impacts us, again, as people of faith. We're also going to be talking a little bit about mental health in the state of Missouri and here in our own area and how that impacts us as a community. There are lots of challenges that we have right now as a state. There's lots of challenges that we have as religious communities in terms of dealing with issues of mental health and how they impact us. And so we are going to be talking about some of those things this morning as we come together after this Mercy Minute.
Hi, I'm Angie Separita with Mercy Hospital Joplin, and I'm here today with Dr. Samir Dalia. Dr. Dalia, your specialty is in hematology and oncology, is that right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your specialty is, and what your patients can find when they come and see you?
Yeah, so at the Mercy Cancer Center, we deal with the surgical outcomes with cancer patients. We have radiation oncologists who also help with the radiation therapy of cancer patients, and then myself as a medical oncologist helps with the medical therapy, including chemotherapy and other therapies for cancer patients.
Very good. And you're located inside the new Mercy Joplin, right?
Yeah, we're located inside the new Mercy Joplin. We have our own cancer center entrance, and we have a beautiful infusion center and radiation suite.
And so if patients need to be seen, do they need a referral?
They don't need a referral.
They don't. So simple as that. They just need to call. So if you want to find out more information, you can call the number on your screen or visit mercy.net.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel. Welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. I'm here with Randy Garris this morning talking about mental health issues and how those impact us. You know, Randy, many times mental health issues are also spiritual health issues. They're also emotional health issues. They're tied in together.
We are all one person, and it's hard to break this up and to go, okay, what's mental health issues, what's spiritual issues, what's just strictly physical, and some of the other factors.
Right.
When I got my start probably in part of this in the early 70s, I worked in a psychiatric unit in Iowa. And as a part of a relationship that I had with the doctor in charge of the unit, took me in one time and with great tenderness. I mean, there was almost tears trickling down this guy's cheeks. I'll always appreciate him. He was looking at a group of people, just a mixture of all ages in life. And he said, some of these, he said, it's just strict biology. He said, no matter what they did, no matter what their families did, they're going to struggle with the biology. He said, it's just, and he said, that's part of this. He said, part of these are here because there's no community. He said, if they would have had community, and he said, I don't know whether they never had the opportunity for community or whether they rejected community, but he said the absence of community. And he said there's another group that are living, he said, outside of reality. He said they've made incongruent choices. And he said they put them there. And he said, and we're not God, we can't know which ones are which ones, so let's take all three to them. Let's go biological with them, let's go with community, and let's talk about congruent lives. And that was my start on dealing with mental health.
He taught you a lot in one lesson.
This was a pretty good guy.
Yeah,
pretty good guy.
This is entertaining, but I had a similar start. I was working in an adolescent psych unit in a hospital run by the Daughters of Charity in St. Louis, Missouri. It's the same hospital where I was born, and then later wound up, doing some work. And so, as I was with there, I had a sister. Her name was Sister Mary Teresa. And she'd been a psych nurse forever. And the only thing was that I was working on that unit. I'll add this piece because I got some of the similar orientation. But this piece was interesting because she said to me, she goes, and now that you're working with these kids, what's one of the first things you notice? And what she was trying to get me to see was that I wasn't really all that different than them.
Yeah.
And that if some of the things had been a little bit different, if I'd have had a different physiology, or if I'd have had a different family, or if I hadn't had that community, or if I were just somehow, because of genetics or whatever, having some break with reality, all those things were just there.
One out of 4 Americans somewhere within a year will have the symptoms of a diagnosable mental illness.
Yeah, well, and to think that we've got almost 6 million residents here in the state of Missouri, and there's 223,000 adults who live with serious mental illness, and about 65 children that live with serious mental health conditions. And so when you start putting those things together, this is something that really truly impacts our community in ways that, sometimes it boggles the mind, to see what's happening.
I preached for 33 years at the College Heights Church here in town, and I have many things I would do better, I hope, next time.
Well, I hope you learned something along the way.
But one of the things is I did think about this as the years have gone by. I just didn't speak about mental illness as often as I should have. Yeah. Most churches, in fact, Ed Stetzer, who does research with Lifeway, Dr. Ed Stetzer, he said that 2/3 of all churches only speak about mental illness in some kind of an intentional manner, one time or less a year. Yeah. That's not very good.
Yeah, and I think we could all improve on that. Especially since so many people in our community have family members who are dealing with things. So many of the people who sit in our pews are struggling with things, depression, other conditions, and it really is something that we probably need to pay a whole lot more attention to in terms of pastoral care. And sometimes we only do that when they're hospitalized, or sometimes we only do it when they're in crisis. And I had a pastor, my first pastor, who always would ask the question where we would say, we spend, if we spend 85% of our time taking care of the 10% of the people who are needy at a given point in time, what's going to happen by the time we go back to the other, to that 85%? That by the time, if we're only paying attention to the 15, by the time we go back to the other 85, how many more of them might have gotten worse, rather than if we learned how to pay attention not just to the 15 who really need us,
right,
but to that 85 that need something from us, as we continue to move forward. Yeah.
The one thing, I knew we were going to be talking about this, and so I called a handful of some friends in the last few days and just had this conversation with them, those in the mental health field, and just having conversations. Checked with an individual who's struggled with mental health their entire life, and just had some of these conversations to kind of think about this a little bit. It's a bit of a misnomer to say that Christians are opposed to medicine or care.
Right.
Most stats say that only about 7% of all pastors or ministry leaders, only about 7% would say, hey, just pray about it and it'll all go away.
Right.
While Christians believe in medication as a general rule, there is probably not enough encouragement that says, I will go with you to go get the medication. I will accompany you. Whatever happens with the doctor or whatever happens with your therapy, you need to know I'll be the guy who drinks a cup of coffee with you every single week. I will hang in there with you. And so if there was any plea that the medical field and everybody else was sort of giving, it was this, is would you bring them? Would you come? You're telling them medication's okay, but would you partner with them more? And so as we'd address an audience here, one of the things I would say is where there's a mental health issue, help them live an accompanied life.
Oh yeah. And I think that is one of the things that we are called upon to do as a religious community or as a faith community, is to help some of these folks who just need a little bit of urging, because so many times they don't understand that there's a problem either, and it either takes them winded up in a hospital where somebody says, now you're going to have an evaluation, or it takes somebody that they love, somebody that they trust, somebody that they care about. And sometimes family members are even too close to the situation. Sometimes it takes someone in a situation like ours to be able to reach out and to, just try to help in a way that's going to accompany somebody on that journey through their life.
I'm probably sitting here making a plea for both of us. Somebody out there who loves us, take us one of these days. Go with us one of these days, is all I'm saying. Yeah.
Fortunately, I have enough good people in my life that I've got watching me, so that if my narcissism ever gets too far out of control, that they'll be able to reel me back in and say, come on, snap out of it. That you're not. This isn't right. This isn't right. One of the things that is a challenge to us is not just, referring people, because I keep a good stack of, of cards of practitioners in the area that I know, but we are blessed in the Joplin area in terms of we're one of the larger metro areas, and so we do have some access to mental health care, here in our community. Most of the rural Missouri is not blessed in that same way. We really have some real issues as a state trying to figure out how do we care for that. So Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Joplin, Columbia, those cities have got some pretty good access, some pretty good care, even Cape Girardeau, places like that. But in a lot of the other places, we don't have a lot of access or care for people. So sometimes, it winds up being folks like us with no training in mental health, with no training in counseling, with some, but not the same way that a regular mental health practitioner would do that. And so we wind up doing the spiritual direction piece, but sometimes the therapeutic approach that's needed is so much more than somebody in our situation can do. And in so many areas, folks are not blessed to be able to have that same access that we do here.
I would suspect that most of my years in ministry here in Joplin, I probably got 1 to 2 phone calls a week. The 2 might be an exaggeration, but 1 wouldn't be, where somebody 30, 50, 60 miles, 100 miles from here would say, this is what I'm dealing with. Do you have anybody to recommend? And so, yeah, I will agree with you. You and I think we're both talking before we came on here. I think 104 counties out of the 114 counties in Missouri, there is no psychiatrist within the county. That's the absence of a doctor who specializes on mental illness and not in the county.
Right. And I found out I had the same number, 104 out of 114, but we're just rated by mental health, raters, if you will, in terms of adequacy of care. So that all the 104 of those counties are just very inadequately staffed. They're just not able to deal with it. And so again, that's kind of a question that I would throw to our legislators, to just say, look, what we are doing is not necessarily working. So how do we do some of those things? How do we help fix that system? Now, again, this is one of those things I always say to the legislators. All right, I'm going to talk about this from a faith perspective, but I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what we're going to do to fix it legislatively in the state of Missouri or nationally. Okay? So all I'm going to say as a person of faith is that this is an issue of faith. And this is one of the areas where we really, truly need to step forward and to do pastoral care. But we don't even have enough allies in the field in so many areas and in so many places to do that. So that's one of those ones that I kind of keep pushing and nudging rather strongly our legislators to say, you got to do something different. This isn't working as we're going right now.
One of the supervisors in the medical field and that I talked to today about this said, I can get somebody in almost immediately for medication, but I cannot get people into therapy, or I cannot get them into inpatient care because I don't have the access to the finances.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about more of that when we come back right after this break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel. Welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. I'm here with Randy Garris this week. A smaller panel than normal, but certainly
Bigger panel than he wished he were.
There you have it. And certainly you've got enough words, to match
Yeah,
with the two of us. We can make up for the third person not here. But we've been talking about mental health issues and how those are issues of faith for us, how they impact our communities of faith, and how we try to deal with some of those issues in terms of in the pastoral work and in the church work that we do. We left by talking a little bit about the fact that we had a little bit of a problem, with having allies in the field in terms of being able to provide all the mental health care needs, in some of the communities. Mm-hmm. We're blessed in Joplin to have lots of practitioners, but in many areas that's not the case, and we all get referrals from outside the area saying, well, where do we go? What do we do? Who do we talk to?
I think in most cases, I would remind people, you start with your family doctor. Mm-hmm. Any time that I have tried to bypass a family doctor to go somewhere, they always remind me that the insurances and everything else tell you start with your family doctor. But once you've done that, you're going to find that there's just an absence of inpatient care.
Right.
And if some of these things get really complex, but honestly, unless they have a very narrow slice of insurance, or unless they're on Medicaid, it's almost impossible to get somebody with therapy and inpatient. I mean, almost impossible, that's too strong, but it is very hard to get that done. And we do need collectively as a culture to do something. Now, I want to be very careful here. I mean, this is such a fine line, and either extreme is so wrong. Anybody who believes that mental health is only medical is not probably living in reality.
Right.
Anybody who believes that living an incongruent life, living a life that has contradictions in it, creates some great confusion.
Oh,
in fact, if I read through the Old Testament, I find King Saul. King Saul starts living outside of the character and the nature of God.
You show me one character who did
not.
Yeah,
I know.
Have some of that conflict in the scriptures.
So there's two hands here, which is the sense of let's teach truth and love people and keep them a community, and that will be healing for many, many people. Psalm 32. David said, until I confessed, I lived with great guilt. Well, there's a spiritual side here, incredible spiritual side. Yeah. But like sprained ankles and broken arms, there are things that just require medical care, and somehow making sure we don't polarize and the two work together.
Yeah, and I do think that those are always strong admonitions to us, to realize that there are some things I'm really good at and there's some things that I'm not. Yeah. So that's why I need these allies in the field to help me. I can help somebody probably live a little more congruent life. I'm really good at that. At least I'd like to think I am.
Yeah, right. No, I understand.
Despite the fact that my own is not always congruent, but that's a whole different issue, and I probably shouldn't do that on TV.
Should we talk?
We'll talk later.
We'll talk.
Okay, but not on TV.
All right.
All right. But when we talk about congruence, that's one of those things that we can be good at, okay? But when it comes to, helping somebody with deep depression, or somebody to, if this is a chemical imbalance, how do we get that person that help? And we really do need to make sure that we are. And that's one of the things I always teach my seminarians is, you got to understand the scope of your own practice, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And if you're not good at it and it's outside the scope of your practice, find somebody who's a whole lot smarter than you are, and find somebody who's a whole lot better than you are, and make sure you can get them to those people. And I think that's important.
There's depression, there's bipolar, and there is a schizophrenia. Those three do exist at a certain predictable level within demographics within a culture.
Sure.
And anybody I would say to young ministers, anybody working with people, that if you don't realize that there is an actual delusion that people are fighting through, and it looks as real to them, and telling them to stop it or quit it is like saying not to see the sky is blue or not to see the ocean is wide. It's a reality. Those things are there. And so any of us who are going to love people, we're going to go intentionally invest in the allies. I've got 2 or 3 or 4 people in the mental health field that I made sure they were my friends a long time ago because I needed somebody who was smart in the areas I was not. Yep. And to make sure that their voice was even in my ear so that I didn't overstate things when I was working with someone bipolar or somebody who was dealing with delusional kinds of things. And having those close friends in my own life I think was a part of even holding my own hands up in ministry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. We had a great model when I was over at Southeast Missouri State. We had regular traffic back and forth between Catholic Campus Ministry and the Center for Health and Counseling.
Okay.
You know, because if we encountered somebody who needed something, I'd say, you know, I think really you would benefit from speaking to a mental health professional. And I could send those students up the hill. I don't do quite as much of that referral here at Missouri Southern, just not on campus quite as much. But when I was on campus 60 hours a week and doing some of those things, it was a bigger, we had people run, I had a stack of release forms where I'd send them up there and then they'd send them down the hill. And all those things were really, really important in terms of just getting people kind of geared into the right mode. Now those are, go ahead.
And I want to make sure, insert, anytime I think we send somebody, and again, I don't know what your situation there was, and I can't say that I've done it to the level that I wanted to, but there was a value of mine that I don't send anybody that we don't say, going back to my Syrian doctor who was teaching, that you don't say, and also we're going to lace you tighter in community. We're not sending you to be done with you. You're going to go see someone, but here are two godly men that in your life, we're going to drink a cup of coffee every week. We are in this journey with you. And I think the accompanied journey with the mental health workers is exponentially better than the referrals that you take your hands off of.
Oh yeah. Well, my whole thing is, I say to people, I think somebody who's better trained in this area can help you with this part of this. Now, you and I are still going to talk about where God is in the middle of all of it. Yeah. And you and I are going to still be talking about, you know, how that impacts you as a person of faith and what I can do to help you and what this community can do to help you. Because, I mean, you know, Catholics, we're the herd mentality of Christianity. It's always we, okay? We are always using the plural. I mean, in everything. I was just like, so that's us.
But I like it.
So we get, you know, it's the whole community, and what can we do for that? And so we'll companion people. We'll have other folks in the community who will help. So yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is not to pass off. This is to work in hand
to
with.
Include.
Yes.
There's the good news and bad news. Ed Stetzer, again from Lifeways Research. Here's the good news. 55% of people who said they had acute mental illness in their past, 55% said their church greatly strengthened them in their faith and in their partnership with the mental health field. Here's the bad news. 45% did not mark that yes, their church greatly helped them and strengthened them in their faith in their partnership with the mental health. And so while the 55 is good, I think the 45 probably would remind us the accompanied life of these conversations with somebody still going through the mental health issues. We hang on. We're not turning loose of you, friend. We're not turning loose. Yeah. We're in this journey together. And
you know, and this is one of the issues that I have again with where we're kind of failing our citizens as a state. And I really do think that we are, and I, you know, and again, I want to nudge our legislators to do that. Like, for example, one of the things that the Catholic Church has been trying to push people on is say, maybe we should consider some kind of an expansion of Medicaid, because then some of these people that are falling through the cracks might not then necessarily. Not as many of them are going to fall through the cracks. There's always going to be some people that fall through the cracks. But can we help a whole lot more than we're currently helping? We at least need to consider some of those options, because, I mean, let's face it, this is part of the reason why our jails are full. Yeah. It's because there's a lot of folks that are in the jail, they're mentally ill. They wouldn't do some of the things that they would do if they were in their right mind, if they were thinking correctly. So many of the people that come to our shelters are mentally ill. They've just been off their meds long enough, and the problem is that nobody is helping them. You know, of course they don't like the way that they feel, and it takes another community person, somebody who loves them to say, I know you don't want to take your medicine, but you really would be better off if you did. So we've got to do something, because that's the reason why so many of the other things in our society are out of whack. That's why we've got more homeless people than we used to. That's why we've got more people in our jails than we used to, because we're not meeting the standard of care, and I don't even think a very decent threshold for the standard of care for people to stay mentally healthy in our community.
If there's not a right and appropriate place to put someone, they will still be in a place that is not appropriate. They will be in the jails, they will be on the streets, they will be bouncing from couch to couch, wearing out individuals. They will be the group that is prone to suicide.
Oh yeah.
They will go somewhere that's not appropriate if we don't help find appropriate places for community and conversation along with medical help.
All right, now we've only got 2 minutes, so I think I'm probably safe doing this.
Okay.
But here's one of those things that I have to do, and I'll put you on the spot and see whether you want to jump on there with me.
Okay.
I keep saying to my legislators that I understand that I don't want money used poorly. I understand that with my whole heart and soul. I hate to see things wasted. I hate it when we waste things in the church. I hate it when we waste things in the state, okay? But if it means that I can provide better mental health services or better services, that's part of the role of government.
Yeah.
So am I willing to pay maybe a little bit more taxes, or maybe at least whine about paying my taxes a little bit less, if it means that I can help some other people? Then I think I'm willing to do that. And we're not having that conversation around here. So I don't know whether you feel the same way I do or not, but
I think I'd be out of my pay grade for me to say what the total answer on Medicaid expansion is.
I agree.
But I am going to say this: if it does not include some way that we do a better job of taking care of the mental health issue, if it doesn't flow into that area in some way, shape, or form, we're spending that money in other places in ways we don't want to, through our jails and everything else and life. It has to be expanded in that area some way.
Well, we've been here talking about mental health issues in our community, how that affects us as people of faith, and we're going to be back after this Mercy Minute. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Angie Separito with Mercy Hospital. I am here today with Dr. Jahan Zeb, interventional cardiologist at Mercy. Is that right?
That's correct.
What type of patients do you generally see?
We see patients with heart and vascular disease problems such as chest pain, shortness of breath, irregular heart rhythms.
And you do, being an interventional, what type of procedures do you do?
Interventional cardiology refers to procedures that are done non-surgically through a minimum invasive approach. They involve inserting catheters, which are thin flexible tubes in the arteries to diagnose and treat problems.
Minimally invasive means less recovery time, so that's good for everybody.
Correct.
Very good. And you're located in the clinic tower at the new hospital, right?
Correct.
Any referral?
No.
No referral. If you want to find out more, you can call the number on your screen or visit mercy.net.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel. Welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. Randy Garris has been with us this week, and we've been speaking about mental health and how that impacts our community, how that impacts our communities of faith. We've agreed on a lot of things. We've agreed on the fact that as communities of faith, we do need to help be that community part of mental health for people, that we need to help and assist our people to be healthy and in various ways. Sometimes they're going to need something physically. Sometimes they're going to need something in terms of counseling or connecting. Sometimes they're going to need something in terms of the life of a community. But we need to help them to connect so that they can be healthy. That is an issue for us of faith. That's an issue of recognizing the dignity of another human person and making sure that we are doing right by each other as human beings. We also touched on whether or not we were doing that well enough on the state level. And while we both agree that we don't have the solutions, we do want to at least raise the questions to say, are we doing enough, especially in our areas, to care for those among us who may be struggling with mental illness? It is an important issue for our community. It's the reason why so many other things are out of whack in our society. But we believe in it, and we just want to make sure that we are with you and that this is part of faith in our hometown.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. here on KSN. Brought to you as a community service by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.